CryptoTutors, CryptoTutors, hey.
It's a way.
Making money in my sleep? Making money in my sleep.
I can still be rocking out to that, Marina. I can still be dancing to the CryptoTutors anthem, the CryptoTutors theme song. Marina, for folks that do not know, let me just give them a little bit of background about why we're here today. CryptoTutors is obviously the place to be if you're looking to learn about cryptocurrency, learn about blockchain, transform that knowledge into wealth. I am Lisa Francoeur. Marina, as ridiculous as it sounds, I never introduced myself. It's just like, you got to know. I mean, if you know, right? My name is Lisa Francoeur. I'm one of the co-founders of CryptoTutors. I am super happy to have a conversation with a brilliant mind in the crypto and blockchain world. Marina, we are going to give you, as the kids say, all the flowers, aka accolades, for the work that you're doing in the industry. It is phenomenal. And just to give folks a little bit of background, today's discussion, Marina released a report called the Global Report on Women, Cryptocurrency, and Financial Independence that was recently released. We're going to be covering that. We're going to be covering Marina's journey into crypto. How far deep down the rabbit hole has she gone, given that she's got the perspective on a global scale of how women are operating within the crypto arena. So welcome, Marina. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to finally be here with you and to be a part of this conversation, because obviously we need to change the narrative and also lead it, if you will.
100,000%. Truth be told, it is so excellent to have you here. We pride ourselves on hosting subject matter experts in crypto and blockchain on the Crypto Couch. We also, focus on elevating the voices and faces of the Black, brown, and female leaders in the space, which you obviously are. And folks who do not know, you're going to learn today. I want to see in the comments, if you know who Marina is, you should absolutely be giving her all the praise. I'm super stoked to have you. And, Marina, tell us a little bit about, how did you get started in crypto?
So I moved 6 times before I was 20, given this little story that I just told you. And so it kind of meant that I was always the new kid on the block, which taught me to always look at things from the perspective of somebody who just started. I had to learn how to say blonde or pen in 5 different Spanishes, that sort of thing. And so it taught me to always just go into things with a very open mind and not judge or assume that I'm an expert. Just wait to have people, share their space and then add value. And so when I moved back to the States to study and go to university, I did public policy and international affairs. And I loved it. That's, growing up abroad, it just really made sense. And then my job, I worked actually at a think tank, and my job was with business leaders. So my boss was a PhD in economics. All the people that I worked with were business leaders. So we were always bridging, right? Bridging the gap between the think tank world and the business world. And, what does it mean to help with development and economic empowerment? I thought nonprofits have to be better at selling and being more like businesses, and businesses have to be smarter about how they take care of their people and their community. So that's where I started, and my job was to build international forums, if you will, for CEOs, and I would have to bring them experts, of blockchain or of Bitcoin or about AI and drones. And so my job was to find them the experts in the world that could deal with these topics. And so I was an expert at finding experts. And one day I found an expert on Bitcoin, and
What day was that? Was this like
2014?
Wow.
Yeah. And so in 2014, I was exposed to some of the brightest people in the space. And we did a conference and session with Jeremy Liu, Chamath Palpithia, and Mickey Malka, and several others that are from international backgrounds, and were completely convinced about this new technology. And I didn't understand it. I thought it was crazy, but I knew that these people that were so smart, that there was something there. And so given that I'm not in finance and that I'm not techie, I think it took me a while to say, okay, I'm brave enough to try this. And then I studied my master's and went down the blockchain rabbit hole and never left. That's kind of how it started.
And so when you were introduced by arguably some of the brightest minds, particularly at that time, 2014, did you feel like inclined to want to invest? Or was it like, let me really start to wrap my head around this before I take any more action?
I don't think that there were like proper wallets yet, to tell you the truth. Like, you probably would have needed a bit of help at the time. I was busy being a mom, working full time, and doing all this other stuff. But it always was in the back of my mind, and I always realized that there was something there. I think it took me understanding the underlying technology, the blockchain, the way that it's immutable, the transparency, all these other factors to make me really say, okay, I'm not afraid of this tech, or I'm not going to be afraid of the money angle. In fact, I'm going to embrace it. And so in 2017 is when I, tried and dipped my toes into the cryptocurrency world officially, right? And then I just worked with blockchain companies in the space doing business strategy and communications. So I was all in. I joined the DAO, joined the venture. I wanted to not just HODL, but actually figure out what does it mean to be in the space, right? Because you can HODL and forget it, or you can trade, but that doesn't really mean you're in crypto.
You touched upon so many points that we're gonna need to dissect a little bit more. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I do think that in this space, there are a lot of like pseudo gurus or demagogues that are like, oh, I'm a crypto expert, and they really haven't done their due diligence. And so it's really exciting to introduce you to the folks within the CryptoTutors community, who are watching the Crypto Couch, seeking guidance and knowledge from, thought leaders and industry leaders that are literally spearheading us into the future. So let's start with the dissection around blockchain, right? This is something that I really want to dig into, because I don't think that people realize that the underlying technology associated with like how crypto operates is the blockchain, but there's so many more use cases associated with it. So tell us a little bit about blockchain, like what it attracted you to blockchain, and maybe some of the innovative use cases that folks may not have ever considered.
I explained it to family in Mexico this way, the way that you used to send a picture and then you would email it to somebody, but you still had a copy of the picture. Well, what blockchain solved is the fact that that picture is officially transferred and you don't get to keep a copy of the picture. And that's why now you can send money and it's not like you keep the dollar bill in your wallet. It literally is sent, because every 10 minutes the chain is updated and it proves that the file or the picture or the money was sent. So you cannot backtrace it. It is extremely positive in that sense, right? So it solved what they call the double spend problem, right? The double picture. And now you can just send it and it's gone. And that's the brilliance that that took me a while to understand.
And I love the example that you gave, because again, in the vein of like laymanizing the conversation so that it can be accessible to folks who are not necessarily in the industry, we like to be very mindful of the fact that there's a lot of technical jargon in crypto and blockchain. So I love that analogy. Thanks for positioning it like that. But another thing I wanted to add is that, with blockchain and the immutability associated with it, I myself come from Haitian descent. And you had mentioned, you're Mexican and Bolivian, I think it was. And so remittances is one of the biggest issues facing emerging markets, in that when you send money home, that money is being cannibalized by virtue of these centralized authorities that are, taking a cut. And so, can we talk a little bit about, in relation to these peer-to-peer networks, how from a remittance standpoint, countries like ours are able to benefit from the fact that the middleman has been taken out?
It's a huge difference. And even though I grew up there, my first time with money was US. So I did not have the cross-border situations until much later in life. But I remember going to those MoneyGram places and you're like scared. just stand in line. Then the amount that you want to send isn't the right amount. And then they say that you have to go to the other office, like all the little hoops and things that you have to do that make no sense. And so to me, I saw that very clearly. And I also saw it with friends. They couldn't open up a bank account. They had trouble getting credit cards, even though they had, perfectly good standing in their home countries, right? And so you would send $50 and they would take 20 out of the whole, amount in certain cases. So I could see it because I grew up abroad, not because I personally was affected by it until much later when I had to do this for family at one point or another, or for my brother, right, who was in another country at some point.
And, the thing about it is that, one of the reasons why I personally believe, and I've said this ad nauseum, that crypto is, and blockchain for that matter, one of the greatest redistributions of wealth is that, the elimination of through, decentralized, the decentralized nature associated with the space is that the middlemen and women for that matter, who are, are taking a piece of profit for just facilitating the transaction, like that's so unnecessary. And so, talk a little bit about, when you were at your think tank, for example, and blockchain, like what are some of the, innovative, maybe more progressive use cases associated with blockchain that maybe folks haven't considered or are not aware of or privy to?
So I really started down the blockchain and the think tank world, but I went to the do tank world, and that's why I'm in crypto. I really
the do tank world. Wait, is that right
from
there?
the think tank to do tank? I don't know. I like building and being in the space. This is actually the first report where I decided to write something because I truly believed in the power of telling our story and not just having one company or a country tell the story of in investments in women. That's why I wrote this. But I much rather be building, shaping, talking, inviting people, educating, and that's where I feel the most comfortable. And also changing minds. I've been speaking to regulators, and I'm actually married to a regulator, and that took a few years to kind of, okay, well, where are they coming from and why are they seeing this? And the reason it worries me is that, they listen to the Wall Street Journal and then they listen and they hear all these things about, Bitcoin being terrible for the environment, and it's not put into context. And there's a lot of the story that is being told by others. So I think our responsibility is to start speaking up, right? And to start shaping the conversation, not reacting to it. And I think that's where I just said, I'm not an expert, but I will empower myself to tell this story because we're just not enough. And we have to get out there and tell these stories and shape the conversation instead of waiting for them to come and talk to us about, El Salvador and sending them Bitcoin to pay the IMF, things like that, right? I don't want to react to that. I want to be part of it.
I love the fact that you recognize how critical it is to shape the narrative, because here's the thing: when you look at the, who's controlling the media, I mean, it's, the central authorities that we talk about, usually in crypto, it's in relation to the Fed and, the centralized banks. But the truth is that when it comes to the public discourse, there's maybe two, media conglomerates that are disseminating the messaging, right? And they have a vested interest in, keeping the status quo. So I really appreciate the fact that in your report, Global Report on Women, Cryptocurrency, and Financial Independence, you have some fantastic key findings. And if I may, I want to cite some of those key findings. You mentioned that a resounding 80% of the respondents said that they prefer to be paid in crypto, and 34% have more than 75% of their investments in digital assets. Now, I call that out specifically, Marina, because when we think about the difference between an inflationary asset like fiat currency versus deflationary assets like Bitcoin, pay me in an appreciating asset, okay? I'm trying to make sure that I set myself, my family, my community, and so forth up for success. And so by diversifying your compensation structure, that in and of itself is a way to actually generate more wealth. What a novel concept, my money making money.
Indeed, exactly that. And again, Lisa, like you mentioned, these are women that are in the space working. It wasn't a random, have you ever tried this? Do you know about this? No, these are women in the space, working in the space. So of course, if they're in it, they have to believe in it, and they obviously want to get paid in cryptocurrencies, right?
Because they know the power, though. That's the thing. Because they're in this space, they know what the implications of being compensated in an appreciating asset are.
Exactly. And also the struggles with the wires, international wires, and your global, like the 2 companies that hired me last year, that none of them have met like in person except at a conference. We worked all of it through Zoom, and cross-border, cross everything. It didn't really matter. And that's very empowering and extremely easy, right? Because a wire can take 3 weeks and get lost, and crypto is 5 minutes and you're set. And like you say, it's not inflationary. It will set you up for the future, but also it can go up and down. So you have to be careful. You can't assume that, I don't think it's I think you have to have a long-term view about it, because you can be in trouble if you have a rainy day and you haven't planned long-term. Right? It is still fluctuating. It is volatile, but I'd rather have volatility than anything. That's not scary. Bureaucracy is more scary.
Girl, we're gonna get into this. Because you said a lot in a very, you said a lot in a little. But I do agree with you. I think that it is super critical for folks to understand, the underlying technology to the extent at which you're able to make wise, investment decisions. And this is something that we are constantly instilling in our viewers, Marina, that we want to make sure that you know we are not financial advisors. We are educators, which is why we bring folks like you to the Crypto Couch to have these very thoughtful and insightful conversations, so that we set our folks up in a manner that lends itself to transform knowledge into wealth. So a couple of other things that I wanted to dive into with respect to just the volatility, right? Like Bitcoin, for example, was the best performing asset of the past 10 years, I think by 1,000%. You can't have exponential, exponential returns without there being volatility. And, we're not necessarily saying you should be a trader, because we're talking about investment strategies, which means that, this is a long-term thing. You're not just in this and, making the transactions, getting in and out. That's not what we're talking about here. You mentioned HODL. I want to circle back to that too, because that's, a terminology, whether, folks have heard it or never heard it. We want to make sure you understand what Marina is saying. HODL means hold, like hold on, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. That's one thing that you can expect in the crypto space, that volatility. But Marina, one thing I will share with you as well as our viewers is that at CryptoTutors, and you can go to CryptoTutors.com, we have an e-learning course which is free, by the way, because we want to make sure that we are able to socialize a sound education around crypto, where we introduce the concept of crypto and blockchain. Yeah. What is Bitcoin? But the introduction of it to stablecoin. So, for folks that are not necessarily familiar with this type of crypto, a stablecoin is collateralized by another asset. It could be fiat, it could be another crypto. And as a result of being pegged to another asset, it keeps the price relatively fixed. And on top of that, Marina, folks are able to generate interest through the process of staking stablecoin USDN. So, we want to ensure that folks are able to walk away from this conversation with actionable insights. And please, by all means, go explore, do your homework and due diligence. But CryptoTutors has a great course that will help shield you from some of the market volatility associated with the Bitcoins, Ethereums, and so forth. So I just had to make that statement right quick, Marina.
Of course, because you need to have, that's the whole point about diversifying, right? I think, you have to have cryptocurrency because those are the interesting, that's where you're going to learn the most. But also, for example, with our friends in Argentina and places where their own currency is devaluates every 6 months. I mean, they immediately converted to a stable coin and then invested or get 8% on their money because they cannot, for example, buy dollars more than 200 a month, or they cannot do, and so their salary keeps on going down. And by putting it in a stable coin, they're able to at least keep their money where it was. And if they need to trade it, then it's okay. Or if there's a volatile moment in the market with the Bitcoin, then they have the stable asset instead, right? So that's why it's important to diversify and understand this. It actually started with gaming, right? If I'm not mistaken, because you didn't want to send Bitcoin and have that price go up and down. So because it was like small little sats, small little amounts, the idea of the stable, token was born from those sort of interactions, right? The small trades or the small changes in the games and in these other industries. That's why it came to life.
I love the fact that you gave us a bit of the history and Second Life. I don't know if you're familiar with that gaming world, but Second Life was literally quasi metaverse where you could create your own avatar. Your avatar could have its own virtual property. Like it was an actual world like that people were, I guess, projecting themselves into, the digital version of themselves into, and that sort of the tokenomics and just kind of helping to develop a currency within the game. Like it's so fascinating to see how much gaming has influenced the crypto blockchain world.
It is. It's fascinating to see how broad it's gotten, and all the NFTs. This is the space where I'm definitely going to have to dive into next, I think, because so much happened in the last 6 months, and it's insane. In a good way. I mean, in a good way. It's fun.
But Marina, so tell us a little bit more about, the report. Another aspect that I thought was very interesting is that, you said on a scale of 1 to 10, women gave themselves on average a favorable 7+ when asked if their financial literacy and independence had improved since they had begun using cryptocurrency. Let's talk about it, because I didn't know shit about economics or any of that until I started getting crypto. Was it surprising?
No, because I lived it. I came from the public policy world, and I'm married to a financial economist, PhD. So I was always like the last person to opine about money. And with crypto, because everybody's new and we're all learning, it gave me permission to say, okay, wait a minute, I kind of know about Ethereum, or I kind of know about, whatever this, because each coin has an ethos and a thought process and a reason for being, right? And so if you understand why it was created, why the token matters, if it's interoperability or scalability, what do they value, then you're able to make smarter or longer term investments and portfolio management ideas. So I think for the first time it's not that I stopped listening, because, obviously I married him, right? He's very smart. The point is, it just gave me the freedom to not be afraid of tackling, a financial asset or a concept that to me before I always felt uncomfortable. And so just that freedom, I think is clear in these women, right? And a lot, remember, I think it's not necessarily the case of a lot of the particular women that I interviewed, but they do see it in the society, right? Where, you still depend on your dad or your husband to make these financial decisions, or it's just like a cultural thing. Dad does this or husband does this, right? And so moving away from that and saying, hey, wait a minute, like I can kind of decide this on my own and think about it on my own. And yes, I may make a mistake, but it's my mistake. And that's the whole concept of financial independence. It's my mistake and I learned something from it.
I commend you for sharing that perspective. It's really awesome to see how crypto, one of the ancillary benefits, I guess you could say, is that crypto is really kind of pushing us to learn and to take responsibility and accountability. And like me personally, I was married for many, many years, and I got married very young, and I got divorced after almost 2 decades, and it was just one of those situations. I know, right, girl? As a child bride, because I'm a baby girl.
It's like we're child brides.
JK, I'm 40 and I'm proud, so it is what it is, and it be what it be. But no, in all seriousness, with that experience of severing ties with, the person that was the primary governor, so to speak, of the household, and just having to kind of like, figure out what I need to do and how I need to do it. And, crypto for me was so in such an inspiration. Like, it's sort of, in order to understand the concepts, I needed to start to understand economics. I needed to start understanding finance. And, it was such an eye-opening experience to see, whoa, there's so much for me to learn, but how exciting it is that I have the power to educate myself and to apply what I'm learning. And honestly, as well, that was like a part of the impetus behind creating a company like CryptoTutors, where we're like, look, knowledge is power. Let's turn that power into wealth.
And I agree with you. This is exactly how I was driven to this conversation. I started advising a nonprofit called Participatory Budgeting Project. And if you're familiar with the concept, it means that you decide how the government spends a certain amount of the budget. And so the people decide, they set up, what could be funded. Then they, set to the people, and then it's voted on. So it really teaches you about democracy, finance, and independence. And with that also was one of the ways that I entered the space of the independence of the cryptocurrency revolution, if you will, and the decentralized finance.
One of the, I think, challenges is that, legislators, there's a huge knowledge gap when it comes to, what's happening within this space. And, we were talking about earlier, we're spending hours, sometimes on a daily basis, trying to like wrap our heads around what's going on within the space. It's like, a perpetual knowledge quest when you're in crypto. And the challenge is that legislators don't necessarily have that frame of reference. They don't have, the knowledge required, I think, in many respects, to make decisions around governance in a way that is conducive for the benefits of all. You cannot take a very like antiquated system and then, plug in innovation into that antiquated system. It's bound and doomed to fail. So I would love to just hear from you. How do we approach the conversation with regulators around governance that kind of sets us all up for success?
That's the interesting part, because I don't think that regulators or government is necessarily wrong or bad. I just think we're allowing others to tell the story for us. And that really limits our ability, right? If they are hearing from the Wall Street Journal and from all these other sources that have a very different narrative, and then that's why we get into trouble. Because yes, probably laws are going to be delayed, and probably everything will be, the technology moves way faster than the laws will. And it always will be that way, right? But if we can just instill the curiosity and tell the story in a way that is compelling, or at least open-minded, the revolution is here. I was told by a former regulator, not my husband, clarification, that this was just not money. And this was not there yet. And it really, was still fringe. And I think it was one of the motivations for the report as well, because it shows if 80% of the women prefer crypto over fiat, and if 35% have more than 75% of their savings in the space, then clearly this is money for them. And it's money for more and more and more people. So a part of my, I guess, my rebellious side, but also an intelligent side, right? You can't just hit them in the face. You have to show them and tell them and show, charts and percentages and show it in a way that is not confrontational, but about curiosity.
Visit CryptoTutors.com to gain access to our free e-learning course called Make Money While You Sleep. Just answer our 8-question survey and you'll gain instant access to a course that was previously $1,000.